spectators are so many blurs. At 195 miles per hour, they head into a 90-degree turn, where tail-out power sliding exits are common, and the noise is deafening.
The BMW M1 is a fascinating car for a whole array of reasons. It was the first proper M car for a start, it was the firm's first mid-engine production car, it should have been built by Lamborghini, and best of all, it was a true race car for the road, having been designed from the ground up as a racing machine. But for all its promise, the M1 entered the world in limbo, and while it has an enviable racing legacy, its greatest achievement might not be the story you expect. In the early 70s, head of BMW Motorsport Jochen Nierpasch was forging ahead with plans to develop a new car specifically for racing. Amongst other things, he felt strongly that BMW needed to take the fight to home turf rival Porsche in the FIA Group 5 silhouette racing class. To be eligible for crazy Group 5 though, entrant cars needed to be homologated in one of the lower FIA classifications too, and so BMW's new racing machine would be homologated in Group 4 first, which required a minimum of 400 road cars to be produced within a 2-year period. Originally, the M1 program was intended to fulfill quite lofty ambitions, not only racing in Group 4 and Group 5, but also being the centre of a new engine program with the goal of developing a 3-litre V10.
In addition to being awesome, it would have given BMW an in with Formula 1,
splitting the difference between the mighty Ford DFV V8 and Ferrari's V12. In the end, however, that particular aspect was deemed too costly, and they would instead power the car with a reworked version of one of their trusty inline sixes. The chassis would be a steel tube frame, over which would be placed a very supercar-esque fiberglass shell designed by the legendary Giuseppe Giugiaro of Ital Design. Graham Robson's excellent book, BMW Driven to Succeed, tells of another dilemma BMW faced with the practicalities of developing a car such as the M1: volume. The company had the facilities to build a handful of cars, and factories that could turn out tens of thousands, but 400 was an awkward number and led to talks of partnering with an outside firm.
Portions of development and production of the final 400 units would be passed off to low-volume supercar builder Lamborghini.
Initially, this seemed to go well, with Lamborghini developing the chassis and constructing a couple of running prototypes, but by late 1977, they were suffering money trouble and started missing BMW's deadlines.
The Germans hated that and terminated the deal in spring 1978. The M1 project was in distress now, but cancelling it completely after so much work had been done would have been pretty embarrassing, not to mention costly,
and so Giugiaro spearheaded a deal drive to pull together what they had and get the cars built. It was complicated, expensive, and many of the cars required pretty lengthy tweaking by the time they got to BMW Motorsport for final preparation, but they did it. The M1 was ready. We'll continue this story after a short break. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you're like me, in that you love history, engineering, and, well, engineering history. This video is sponsored by Hungry Minds, the group behind this absolutely wonderful book. The book, even. No, seriously, it's the book, The Ultimate Guide to Rebuilding Civilization. It's an exploration of some of history's most incredible inventions and discoveries, presented alongside these beautiful illustrations, all bound up in a lovely, big hardback book with over 400 very satisfyingly thick pages, covering 180 unique topics. It really is a very lovely thing to have around and lose yourself in every so often. Anytime I find myself turning through the pages, I'm reminded why I love science and engineering. The book started as a Kickstarter campaign and has gone on to be a bestseller, which is no surprise really. I don't own another book quite like it, and since getting it, it's become one of my favourites. You can buy a copy for yourself or as a great gift for a science and engineering nerd in your life by following the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. The book also contains a hidden puzzle, adding another layer of intrigue for you to follow through the pages this holiday season. So follow the link and be sure to use my discount code automobilistic10 for 10% off your purchase. Thanks to Hungry Minds for sponsoring this section of the video, and now back to the story of the BMW M1. The BMW M1 wasn't like the stripped back, hard to live with box ticker homologation specials that might have come to mind when you hear the term. BMW Motorsport had been steadfastly committed to ensuring it was a quality machine. In road car trim, the M1's 3.5-litre inline-six pushed 277 brake horsepower and could power the car to 162 miles an hour. It was designed to be able to cruise at 120 miles an hour indefinitely on the German autobahns, though both BMW themselves and car reviewers make note of the high levels of noise in the cabin when pushed hard. Overall, the M1 road car was an undeniable triumph for BMW Motorsport, even without considering it was the division's first crack at a real road car. But what about the car's true original purpose? What about racing?
Unfortunately, due to the complications involved in the creation of the cars, BMW's new M1 was ready to race too late for its intended purpose, with the full 400 cars not expected to be done until 1981.
So in order to try and salvage whatever they could, they got talking to Max Mosley, the head of the Formula One Constructors Association at the time. The idea was to set up a pro car series, serving as a support race for the European rounds of the Formula One World Championship. 30 car races, with 25 being piloted by owners and the remaining 5 being piloted by the top 5 fastest F1 drivers in that weekend's final practice session. Kind of. BMW had penned a deal with Goodyear for tyres, and so F1 teams partnered with Michelin refused to allow their drivers to race in the Pro Car series, which seems beyond petty to me. The first running was in 1979, and unsurprisingly, there were a handful of top drivers that found themselves in the M1s regularly. After an 8-race championship, victory went to Niki Lauda, ahead of Hans Stuck in second. The series would run again in 1980, this time with Nelson Piquet taking championship victory after ending the season with 3 consecutive victories. After 1980, however, the BMW M1 Pro Car series simply ended. It only ran for 2 years, but despite lateness scuppering the M1's chance in European Group 5, the one-make F1 support event was not the only competition M1s found themselves competing in. Homologated in the IMSA GTX class due to the low production numbers at the time, the 1979 BMW M1 GTX that ran in the 24 Hours of Le Mans is probably not only one of the most famous iterations of the M1, but one of the most famous individual BMW cars ever made. It ran with a livery hand-painted by Andy Warhol, and in the hands of Marcel Minot, Manfred Winkelhock, and art car mastermind Hervé Poulin, the pop art Beamer powered through 288 laps of the South Circuit, crossing the line in 6th place overall. A pretty impressive result. Much like with Group 4 in Europe, the production homologated IMSA GTO class in America remained off-limits in the early years due to the slow rate of production. But beginning as early as 1980, M1s did find their way into IMSA proper, competing in the prototype GTX class alongside cars like the Porsche 935 that BMW had originally envisioned battling in European Group 5. The GTX class was the American analogue for Group 5 and served effectively as the precursor class to the Group C adjacent GTP class that would be introduced a couple of years later. 2 forms of BMW M1 were entered into the class. There was the road car-derived style, like the art car that had contested Le Mans in 1979. These were cars that were built for road-homologated classes like Group 4 or GTO, but that didn't yet qualify due to the low production numbers. Then, there was a true prototype variant, developed by March Engineering, that lent into the rules of GTX, allowing them much more freedom. These GTX cars, though, in both guises, just weren't really on par with the Porsche 935s at all, and remained kind of obscure throughout their time in competition. By 1981, however, things had changed. 1981 was the final year of production for the M1, which meant there had finally been enough produced for the car to be eligible for its original purpose, road homologated competition. Immediately, the car found itself in the IMSA GTO class, with the first winner being the America-based Bavarian Motors International. BMI was immediately effective, with drivers Alf Gebhardt, Hans Stuck and Walter Brunn scoring GTO class victory at Daytona and finishing 6th overall. Elsewhere in the field, both Red Lobster Racing and David Deacon Racing were also contesting GTO with M1s, while BMW Motorsport themselves were continuing to fight in the GTX class.
For context, at Daytona in 1981, the GTX Class M1 finished 10 places behind the class-winning GTO car.
While BMI had a dream start to their campaign, they and many other BMW runners in the series were inconsistent fixtures of the field, with only Red Lobster Racing able to sustain a consistent campaign with the M1. And they were rewarded handsomely for their dedication, taking 12 victories across the 16-race season, landing BMW a comfy Constructors' Championship victory, and lead driver Dave Cowart a truly dominant Drivers' Championship victory too, nearly 100 points ahead of his teammate Ken Pamilla, who was in turn almost 100 points ahead of the closest non-BMW driver, Chuck Kendall, in 6th.
Yeah, the top 5 drivers in the championship had all used BMWs that season.
The M1 had totally controlled the year, completely vindicating BMW Motorsport's belief that they could develop a winning, road-homologated race car. After the shockingly enormous success of 1981, however, the GTO M1s slumped steeply, quickly vanishing from the field in just a few years.
1981 had been a great sweet spot, and given the trouble BMW had getting the cars built at all, the fact it was eligible and capable of winning IMSA GTO is pretty miraculous.
From 1982 though, the sports car racing scene would change quickly, following the introduction of Group C in Europe and GTP in America, leading to the rapid rise of a wholly new generation of racing machines and serving as the end of the racing world the BMW M1 had been built for, and the beginning of something completely new. The M1 Pro Car series is well known, as is the 1979 Le Mans Art Car, but for whatever reason the car's huge IMSA success seems to be a much less well-known aspect of the M1's history, despite arguably being the car's most impressive performance, proving it wasn't just good for racing against other M1s, but could take the fight to Porsche and Ferrari and win. Watch another great IMSA story here.
Thank you as always to the wonderful channel members for supporting Automobilistic. To help us keep making videos like this one, click or tap the join button below. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and until next time, goodbye.